Welcome to the Product Leaders Edge podcast. Welcome back to the Product Leaders Edge podcast. I'm your host, KJ Green. I'm a product leader, entrepreneur, and a lover of all things technology. And welcome to episode 2. We made it to episode 2. We had a successful launch. Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for listening. It meant the world to me. I really, really appreciate it. It meant the world to just be supported by you guys in this way. And honestly like just the outpouring of love, the outpouring of helpful feedback was so incredibly, yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoy just hearing from you guys because I think with creating content, it's just a learning process, right? I don't want to say it's tough, but it's one of those elements of work that's less about hype, in my opinion, and more about growing alongside the process. And I can honestly say that I am growing alongside this with you all growing alongside this with you all. Whoa, it is 2026 and it's February, the end of February. What goals do you have set for this year? Let me know in the comments if you're on YouTube. Let me know through my email in the show notes if you're on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. What are your goals for this year? Because February is one of those tricky months of the year. It's tricky because you start January. Well, let's go all the way back to December. There's December, super emotional. It's the end of the year. You're either glad for, excited and happy for all the accomplishments that you have, or you're either like, I didn't quite get to the goals that I wanted to this year, and it's emotional, right? Now, January starts off with a burst of emotion. You're just happy. You're ready to kick off the goals. You started the gym membership. You change your eating habits. And then January 20th hits after the MLK holiday. And it's like, what happened? Where did your goals go? And then it's February, a month later, and it's like it didn't even exist. Because February is one of the most dangerous months of the year for goals. If you lose traction at the end of January, it's very hard to get back onto your goals in February. So I would say stay accountable to your goals because February is also the middle of the quarter of Q1. So if you fall off here, you may not get back on the train till about, if you're really holding yourself accountable, April, and that's like Q2, 2 months wasted. So this is a good point to just check in with yourself and hold yourself accountable. Hold thyself accountable. So, this is episode 2. This episode is titled Product and Life, a Conversation with KJ and Kyle. Product and Life, a Conversation with KJ and Kyle. So, Kyle is one of my best friends. We met in business school here. We met in 2023 or 4, either one. But this conversation just basically explores just the intersection of product leadership and life. And you guys get a front row seat to some of the conversations that I have with Kyle just every day in our conversations. We recently met up for brunch the other day, and yeah, you guys get a front row seat on the things that we talk about in our lives and how we're seeking to grow our careers in product management. And this was actually my first interview episode. So super exciting. Thankful that Kyle was so gracious to do this interview with me. It's also a branded episode as well. So it's part one because I'm leaving the door open for when Kyle comes back to come back to share insights, growth in his career, and just to continue the conversation between him and myself and you guys. And at that point in the world, this was recorded back in early 2025, so about literally about a year ago from the time I'm recording this recap or opening, if you will. At that point, I think AI and AI agents were coming to be. So you'll hear Kyle talk a lot about agentic AI and AI agents because he was actually conducting research at the University of Michigan at that time. So, yeah, it's a awesome conversation. It was my first, as I said, my first interview conversation, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It's pretty relaxed. Hope you guys enjoy it. I wanted to just come in and check in with everyone, making sure that we are staying true to our goals, staying true to the foundation that we all set for 2026. Yeah, enjoy this episode. Let me know your thoughts. Please comment, like, share, leave a review. And thank you all so much. And I will let you get to the episode.
Welcome back to the Product Leaders Edge podcast, your blueprint for innovation and growth. I'm your host, KJ Green. As you know, I'm a product leader with experience in AI, cloud, and entrepreneurship. And as we've said before in the last episode, this podcast is your monthly industry event where you can explore the evolving world of product leadership, AI, and emerging technologies. But today I have a special guest in the room who's one of my close friends and a fellow product leader. And today we'll be discussing just the intersection of product leadership and life and how we've navigated our careers, adapted to the current industry and ever changing shifts in the tech market, and just the balance as leaders in this just evolving space that we live in today. So, Kyle, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Hey KJ, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here. A little introduction about myself. So, spent 5 years working, building out cloud products for various healthcare platforms, as well as financial technology providers. And right now at the wonderful school, the Michigan Ross. Um,
So, just for some context for the audience, I met Kyle while I was at the University of Michigan, and we actually met at a product management conference about a year ago. And that just kind of shows just the nature of who we are. We went to this conference on a Saturday. We
yep.
could be doing anything else, but just wanted to go. And we went and we met and we clicked and we've been friends ever since. And Kyle is one of my closest friends in the product space and so super excited to have him here today. So just a format for everyone so you know, we'll just be working through just a few questions just to really get a sense of how Kyle has grown in product management and also some current projects that he's working on that are super exciting. So let's dive in, Kyle.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you have an MBA from University of Michigan, Go Blue. How did that degree shape your approach to product leadership and your career decisions?
Yeah, so as you probably saw through the MBA, there's a lot of opportunities to just really dive deep on different
Mhm.
topics, whether product management, artificial intelligence, financial technology. And I think through all those paths, it's gave me kind of like a sense of like what my interests are. But I really do think the MBA is a great time to do that reflection and really just dive deep on topics. Now, I would say like my approach to leadership wise, it's taught me a lot of valuable skills. So like I would say, I think before I really focused on more of like how things are going to work, more on the execution piece. But now I feel like my mindset has shifted more of like what impact is this going to deliver for the business, the organization? So that kind of mind shift change has now kind of shaped my way of leadership of like if I'm going to introduce a new feature or maybe make a change to a product, my first thought is what impact are we going to deliver and what value are we going to bring to our customers versus how is this possible and how are we going to do this? And I would say the other thing is something I've been reflecting on a lot is thinking bigger picture on topics. So I think it's very easy to kind of get stuck on the nitty gritty of the day to day. But when you kind of take a step back and think about what is going on in the market from competitors, what are the different trends, you kind of see where your product decisions kind of fit within that whole model and just finding that niche. And then the other thing is something that kind of gets reflected, and I think you just kind of grow with it as you go in your career, but thinking more along the stakeholder lens. So, for instance, when you're giving a presentation to maybe the SVP of product,
Mhm.
they care about certain things versus like if you're going to give it to maybe the marketing team or maybe the sales team. You're going to deliver it differently. So just understanding what constraints and what do these other stakeholders care about. So I would say like those are kind of like some of the key takeaways from a product leader perspective that I've gotten out of the MBA. I think it's just like a mind shift change to really just experiment with those different areas.
I love that. I love that perspective because you talked about customers, holders, and mindset shifts, which I think a lot of people often make the argument of why one should pursue an MBA and if an MBA is even needed for product management. But to your point, it really helps you to think at a strategic level and explore a lot of different areas. I mean, we're obviously paying for it, right? We know we're paying for this experience. We're paying for it, right? It's fine. We're paying
Yeah.
for it. But at the same time, though, that's investment of self, right? And oftentimes, if we don't invest in ourselves, like who will? Who will? I think that leads to my next question. Do you think PM should consider an MBA, or do you think there are other alternative paths that people can consider? Obviously, you chose the MBA path. I chose the MBA path. But do you think it's necessary or people should look at other things?
I don't necessarily think it is necessary, but there's a couple of things I'll probably add on why that
Hmm.
decision was in the back of my mind when I was kind of at the crossroads of like, do I move from what I was doing before to pursuing an MBA to make that jump? So I think there's a lot of roles that are adjacent to product management, whether you're looking at sales, customer success, even engineering or software development, right? All of those kind of come together to kind of fit into the product manager role because the product manager kind of
Right.
fits in the center of that or the center of those double circles in the Venn diagram to some extent. So as long as you can kind of do something adjacent and make a case. But the thing is when you're looking at products, I feel that you have to, if you're in those roles, to think about it and get those opportunities to help out, say, if the product team and saying like, hey, do you need an extra hand for me to maybe help you out with the roadmap if you're interested in that? Or, hey, if
Hmm.
you're an engineer, you know, can I think about what is the business outcome or the strategy of this product in the next quarter and maybe what features to prioritize? So just taking on those responsibilities on your plate that are product management adjacent and just building on that is gonna take you there. Now, the MBA route, to your earlier point, it is very expensive, as we both know, but
Oh, it's
it
pricey, people. It's pricey.
it is very pricey. But the way I saw it was more along the lines of a bet on myself for the long-term trajectory of things. And I think education and knowledge is power, and I've always been a big believer in that. And for me, from my background, I wanted to kind of have those broad strokes in business to kind of have that mind shift change and to learn an accelerated environment and then fail a lot faster. And I was talking this with my classmates about a week ago, and we were kind of discussing how much we've grown since starting the MBA. And if I were to
That's
look
good.
back in time of like every year of growing in my career,
Yep.
I would say the NBA I've grown the most. And that's something that's kind of hard to really get sometimes in the day to day or work environment.
I agree because it's an intentional 2 years that you take away from the workforce to recalibrate, reset your life that will set a greater trajectory in the long term. Again, we're not telling people to do MBAs.
Mm.
We're just saying it as an option to consider for one's career. You mentioned working with engineers, and I know sometimes working with engineers, it could be a bit complex. And I think from a product management perspective, they do sometimes engineers expect us to be technically conversant and to not to know their job, but to at least know enough to be able to inform the technical build of a product. So how have you been able, in your experiences from what you've seen, how have you been able to balance business needs with just the realities of working with large engineering teams?
Yeah. So I guess to touch a little bit upon my background, I've have more of experience in the DevOps space, in
Yep.
the cloud environments. But after that, one thing that I took away, and I think what engineers care about is appreciation for what they do and bring to the table, and just being really curious about how does this technology work. And I think as a PM, it is sort of your responsibility to really care about how this is going to work, what's the implementation, and what are the constraints that the engineers are working under. And I think when you're thinking about it, it's just getting curious rolling up your sleeves, learning about how your product works. But I think the kind of balance that is setting the right expectations up front with stakeholders. You're going to get feature requests, there's going to be priorities. But as a PM, if you understand or are curious how your engineering team works, what the technology is, you can kind of protect your team and say things like, hey, if we do this, we're going to take away resources from doing these other features that we have on the roadmap, or this is not possible and this is why we made the decision because maybe the right configurations aren't in place, and this is going to be a lot more work than what you would expect. So it's sort of just being able to balance those expectations and be that bridge between maybe executive leadership or sales and marketing teams and your engineering team. But it really just comes to having that empathy for what the engineers are working on and what they're doing.
Nice. That was a great way to sum it up. And I totally agree. I think it's just being able to prioritize. A lot of this job is prioritization at the highest, like ruthlessly prioritizing at the highest degree, because we get so many requests. Someone in marketing, someone in sales, even someone on our teams wants to build this X thing that may be AI driven, AI powered, cloud powered, edge AI, just something that's the next best technology. But it's like, what will drive user growth? What will drive monetization rather than chasing after that shiny thing that may not be the best use of our engineers' time? So I'm glad that
100%.
you really highlighted just the realities that we have to consider with that. So I know that you're doing some research on agentic AI, which is super fascinating. I feel like our world is moving so fast. And last year, while I was in school, I was doing research on just like the basics of artificial intelligence and how we can use it for people to learn how to like program and understand computer science skills. But now we are a step up from that within the agentic AI world. So how do you see this research or just agentic AI in general shaping the future of product leadership?
Yeah, and many of your listeners will know it's such a fast-moving environment that if you don't get your hands on the tools, or you turn to the next day and you're already behind because so much news comes out of like what's happening in the AI space. To your question around how does it change product leadership, I think when I'm for my research and just for context of the audience, that agentic AI, at least from my definition, there's 1,000 different definitions, and I'm sure if we said AGI, there's about 1,000 different more.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but for me, it's essentially AI that has a goal-seeking initiative in mind that could autonomously kind of accomplish tasks on its own or with limited supervision. And it can also adapt and learn from its environment. And that's kind of the way I see it. Obviously, a lot of nuances there, but to the point of how AI is going to shape us as product leaders, I think the first thing is judgment. And let me talk a little bit more about this. So,
Hmm.
with AI, people sometimes take it for face value, but sometimes the AI is not plugged into those right data sources or to that right type of information, or
Right.
doesn't have the context to know, hey, maybe, with the data, sure, that makes sense, but they're not considering this, this, and this, and this. And when we think about data, a lot of data is also maybe not in a database. It's maybe through spoken word or maybe conversations that you've had at passing. And so just being able as a product leader to see maybe an output from a AI model or anything, and just being able to make the right judgment call of like, hey, is this actually taking in all that facts, all the data into consideration? The other way I see it is efficiency gain. So I
Right.
think as product leaders, what you're kind of thinking about is what is the strategy for this product in the next, 5, 10 years, maybe the next quarter. But there's ways to kind of make yourself with the balance the time. I would say right now, or typically, maybe if we look a couple of years ago before AI, I would say the balance was more on the tactical, but the most impactful work that you can deliver was more on the strategic. Where are you going? Why are you doing what you're doing? And that was
Right.
mainly from a day to day. That was like maybe like the 10, 20%. But now with AI, you can kind of shift the script a little bit and kind of use AI to help build roadmaps, summarize emails, take meeting notes. And
Wow.
now that changes. I also like to say it's a buddy. And what do I mean by this? Essentially, like it's a way to challenge your line of thought. So I've used AI before. Here's my argument, goals. And then now you can take that type of argument to maybe a SVP of product or maybe your team, and you have the answers to maybe what AI already pointed out. So I would say it's really kind of those three ways of shaping that product leadership is just using it as another tool and resource to really just get better at the job and focus more on the strategic elements.
I love that. I love that. And I think, I mean, we've all kind of used AI, Chat GPT and Copilot and all these other platforms in that regard, even before it was kind of given this light that it is today. But I think a lot of the listeners and just everyone in general, we value these benefits, right? And what you explained and what you described was so real and just so beneficial to our productivity and our day-to-day work. But
Mhm.
the real question is like, do you think that this will disrupt traditional PM roles, or will it create other new and exciting opportunities? Like, what do you think will happen in the market as a result of this new technology?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Something I've been kind of pondering or thinking about over the past couple weeks, especially starting the research. So I don't know if it will totally take over PM roles, but what I would say it would do is shift maybe what is expected of PMs and what can be accomplished with PMs. So I could kind of
Right.
see AI performing like if you look at products like Bowl or Lovable or others that can kind of take design and coding and rapid prototyping into nature. I think it's going to be where you have smaller teams that can accomplish a lot more with less people, but more advanced or more upscale technologies.
And I agree too. Another Industrial Revolution 2.0, where
Yeah.
it's this shift of the market, where you introduce a new technology, it does take away things, including jobs, but it also adds new opportunities as well. And we've seen this many times over from the Industrial Revolution itself, the dot-com boom with the internet, the streaming boom in the early 2000s, and now we're just like living what this will be in real time. So good points there. I think a little bit more deeper on just the evolution of product management. I'd just like to hear your perspective on, do you think with all of this change going on and just in general, from a general sense, do you think PMs will shift more to being more business ownership PMs, or still needing to maintain some deeper level technical expertise?
So I would say mainly more business. So not one size fits all, but I think it's
Yeah.
going to be an importance for business ownership more than ever and those soft skills. And there's a couple of reasons I say this. So with artificial intelligence to make changes to your product or design a better interface, there's really no excuse now for you not to have a great customer experience or journey. And I think those soft skills of having a great product sense or taste for products with I can imagine there's gonna be a lot more products now than ever
Right.
before. Now it's a lot easier. So I think customers just aren't going to put up with a bad interface or intuitive design. I think to your point around business leadership side, I think all the more important now than ever to be more of a business leader to understand, is this solving the right problem? Are we seeing this like how does this compare to competitors? How are our customers going to feel or think about that? So those soft skills, how to tell a story with the products that you're building with these new technologies, things of that nature. I think the soft skills are going to be more important than ever. And that's going to kind of shift a little bit more on the business leadership side. But I think the tech is still
Mm,
important. So, and the reason I say this is because I don't know necessarily if now there are individual contributor lanes in PM, and I know that's a big growing, I guess, change of people just being ICs through probably most of their career. But I would say you have to still be curious, even if you are a business leader in PM, because if you aren't aware of, and we've kind of discussed it, the disruption around AI, you're just going to, or other technologies, you're just going to fall behind. So being up to date and diving deep on these technologies or being knowledgeable what they can do and what they can't do from a business sense is going to be important.
okay. Okay. That's an interesting perspective. And I think it's a balance of both. We have to, as PMs, we have to carry both in
Yeah.
our toolkit for sure. For sure. So these questions that I have for you are a little bit more of like long-term vision, executive growth. And I really picked them and curated these questions because thinking about you, like when we first met, like I feel like we connected because
Yeah.
we both had a shared vision of wanting to grow in product management, wanting to be the best PMs that we could be, whatever that means. And that's why we went back for our MBAs. And quite frankly, we attended that conference on a random Saturday when we
Yes.
could be doing anything, something else. So I guess like as you grow in your career, what mindset set shifts do you think that you need to embody as you move into in the future a VP or a chief product officer role?
Yeah. Kind of getting a crystal ball and thinking into the future. I would say kind of to the earlier point around the MBA, I would still kind of holds true of being more comfortable of understanding that even though I might feel this ownership towards this product or this idea or this feature, that thinking
Right.
from a broader outcome of the entire business. Because when you grow as a leader in the product space and you're starting to get to the levels of you're having these really senior counterparts in like CMOs or CFOs or chief strategy officers or you name it, the point is like now you can't be thinking about it from just a product lens. You have to be thinking about like why is, what's the big picture here in terms of what do these other stakeholders really care about and how does this holistically fit into the puzzle that is like the company, right? And more on business objectives and outcomes than say maybe product metrics or objectives. Obviously, those will kind of cascade through, but you have to kind of start thinking from that lens. I think the other kind of mind shift think is there's obviously we talked about the individual contributor, but I think at some point as you grow into an organization, there's that people management. So it's caring less about you care deeply about the products, don't get me wrong, but it's more about entrusting to the people to build the best products that they can build and setting that culture for the organization. So the emphasis is kind of shifts the scale maybe less on, hey, let me build the best products myself or like with the team or maybe manage a portfolio and more on like, can I set that right culture, the trust that the people can build those products and have the right frameworks, the tooling, the mentorship, the growth to really succeed as product manager and trust that your team will do it. So more on that team management side, culture building side, I think is another mind shift change. And I would say those would kind of be some of the biggest ones. And I think the last thing I would maybe say is, obviously as a product manager, you're thinking very strategically about the roadmaps and where this product is going. But I think as you move up the ladder as senior product manager and above and director of project and so forth, you have to start thinking about what is the overall organization's mission and vision and like what is the mission and vision for your products and portfolio and do these products make sense working together and am I actually putting a cohesive portfolio of products or does this seem like it's all over the place? So it's more of like being able to manage a portfolio and not really just being deep on one particular product or product line.
I love that. I love that. I never thought of it like that. Wow, wow. Really, really good perspective. What's your long-term vision for your career, Kyle? And what skills do you plan to build as you grow your career in product
Yeah.
management?
So I'm kind of so a little bit of background and context here. So right now I'm also part of the International Investment Fund here at the University of Michigan, and there we invest in startups in Africa, India, and so forth. So that investment piece has been something that's pretty interesting in developing companies to really succeed in the marketplace and provide them with the tools and resources and support. So I think kind of taking that into consideration and that love for product, long term, I would love to be like a chief product officer for a financial technology
I
company
love it.
or a SaaS company. But on the side, I think I would really love to do maybe either angel investing or just having some sort of like incubator or program to really support like emerging startups, I think is kind of rewarding because for me, I like things at an earlier stage because I think it's exciting, it's fast moving, there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of ambiguity, and just being able to really help people out because I've been say I've hopefully at that level in my career, I've been there, I've seen it, I've done that. So hopefully I can offer some assistance and support and mentorship to maybe early stage founders or startups kind of growing in this area and for me, that's really rewarding because I know I personally love people management. I know some people don't, but I just see it what like how can I help this person, or how can I mentor this person, or how can I support someone on their journey? I might be a small part
Mhm.
of that, but how can I really develop others and really have them be successful? Because I think that's sometimes more fulfilling than own personal achievement, is seeing someone else be successful in their careers and what they're doing, and knowing that you probably had a small part in really shaping someone's direction.
Yeah, that's what it goes back to, impact. And I think when we help people, we inevitably help ourselves. But the role of a product manager is to help people to
Yeah.
be better. You're building this feature, this functionality, this tool to help a customer to achieve whatever goal that they have set out for themselves. So I'm glad that you were able to tie this back to just the people aspect, because that's a lot of what the job consists of. Outside of the strategies and the frameworks and the DevOps and the cloud and the AI, comes back to people. And just some takeaways that I wanted to leave the audience with. So, first one, strategic decision making is critical for executive leadership, as we know. AI is redefining product leadership, and adapting to it is essential. Product leaders need to be both strategic and have some sort of technical depth. And leadership at the highest levels is about vision, influence, and business impact. Oh, Kyle, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, loved being here, and I appreciate what you're doing for the community. And maybe next time we could do it in person, when I'm in New York.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do something at one of these studios in New York City. For sure, for sure. I'll make that happen. But that's a wrap on today's conversation. Huge thanks to Kyle for his time and for joining me and sharing these insights. And tune into the next episode. I'll also be featuring another one of my product friends who will share out on his insights as well in the AI space and how he's building products in his world. But in the meantime, stay connected, subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, leave a review because that helps everyone to see the podcast. It helps promoting this knowledge out to the world, and connect with me on LinkedIn, and also follow the Solo Star page for more insights. Until then, see you all soon. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Product Leaders Edge podcast. If this episode gave you a new way to think about product leadership, share it with someone else who's building in the tech space today. You can follow my work on LinkedIn through my weekly series, Tech Tuesdays with KJ, and subscribe to the newsletter on Substack, which is Solostar by KJG.substack.com. And I'll link all of that into the show notes for you all. But let's continue to build at the intersection of product, cloud, and AI. Until next time, keep building.